Tabletopped will start after the following messages.
Are you looking for something comfortable to wear and keep your brain warm while playing tabletop games? Daily Dose of Yarn makes handmade, customized beanies for all of your style and comfort needs. She can even help you with a custom beanie to represent your favorite character. Check out Daily Dose of Yarn on Instagram and Etsy to order your new favorite beanie today.
All right. Welcome back, everyone, to Tabletopped, where we talk with criminal degenerates. And today is the worst criminal of all, the man who founded this podcast, Nick Perron.
It's
Nick.
true. They just let me out of the solo confinement. I busted out so I could make this interview.
Well, Nick, we've brought you here today on your very own podcast
Yes.
to discuss the fact that it has been 1 year since you founded this podcast. And out the gate, I have to ask, what do you have to say for yourself, Nicholas?
You know, it's a great question. Honestly, I should be apologizing to everyone, but I won't because I'm a criminal. No, I've just been so excited that this has lasted a full year so far. So that's the first thing I have to say is thanks everyone for listening. But yeah, otherwise, the podcast is just sort of this thing that because we have a Discord and a game group where we all hang out and talk, and there's about 4 or 5 DMs in there and GMs. And so we just talk shop, and like whenever we would be in, cars driving from place to place or just hanging out, doing like dinner parties or whatever, everyone would just start talking shop. And it was some of the stuff that really got my engine going. I was like, man, this is the best. I want to talk about this more. And so thus the podcast was born.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that now that you're a reformed man, we can dispense with calling you a criminal degenerate. But I am curious, so obviously we've all had a lot of fun with the podcast. What really has been the highlight and your takeaway from this year? It's been no small undertaking on your part. So I'm just kind of curious, what is it that you're getting out of this that keeps you going?
Yeah, that's a good question. So at first it was just like, I get to talk to my friends and I get to make this thing. And it was like a good creative outlet and was also able to do something with the topic that I love. But as we've kind of continued on through it, I've gotten to talk to some really, really amazing people like Basil Wright and Nat Mesnard and Moya McTeer, I guess Dr. Moya McTeer, Dr. Emily Zarka, just like a bunch of really cool people. And we have some designers coming up, not to mention Mike Sands, who is my like the epitome of a game designer for me because he made my favorite game. But like, I would have never been able to talk to any of these people before the podcast, and just being able to sit down and really talk about this kind of shared love that we all have, which is storytelling and game design, and being able to really broaden how I think about all of those topics has been like really, really meaningful to me. It's an interview that hasn't come out yet, but Fern Milton, who is a game designer who created Locus, was talking to me about how, game mechanics should all be in the service to storytelling, and a game, when you experience dissonance in a game, it is usually because the mechanics that you're trying to follow to play the game aren't lining up with your character or your story in a real cohesive way. And I was like, whoa, I had this like huge kind of like brain expanding moment where I was like, yeah, that's why everyone hates initiative.
Yeah, I know that Franco's going to really love that episode.
Yeah,
because he's always bringing up ludonarrative dissonance.
Yeah,
which I think is a valid critique of a lot of RPGs. Well, that's really great though, because if you had told me a year ago that you would be interviewing people like Mike Sands, I would have said, okay, sure, buddy. I don't know how you're going to achieve that. Or Dr. Emily Zarka. I've always been a big fan of hers as well. And I've just been blown away personally by the amount of just amazing guests that you have been able to secure thus far.
Well, this is the thing, is that the TTRPG and game community is actually just like the nicest group of people ever. Yeah, or at least the circles that we travel in.
That's true. Yeah,
are very, very kind and generous with their time, and people want to talk about this kind of stuff. So it's just been like really nice to be able to find those people and realize that even, your hero that you have in your heart of hearts of like, man, I love this game, or I love how they act on this actual play. Most likely, if you like sat down and talked with them, you would have a lot in common.
No, yeah.
And absolutely. They would love to talk to you as well. So it's just been like really kind of warms the cockles of my heart to have that be my experience so far. So far, I haven't met any like real assholes, which is good.
Yeah, just the ones that you normally associate with. That shade guy in particular. One of the other things that I was curious about was really what has been, and maybe you can't choose for this, but what has been your favorite episode thus far?
Oh, that's so hard. Yeah, I think that I love different episodes for different things. There's an episode that we did fairly early on called The Horror, which is sitting down with Sean and Greg to talk about horror game design and like how to run games that are supposed to be tense and scary, and that is sort of my jam. I definitely want to have another revisit of that topic, just because I could talk about it endlessly. But that was just like a really fun one, because it was just, me getting to talk to other people who really love that genre and being able to just like dive into it. If I was to talk about guests, they've all been really fantastic. I think that the one that I was that helped me think a different way about games was with Nat Mesnard, who they're just like a very cool writer and teacher and designer. They actually have a game development studio or publisher, I guess, that they're making right now. So I'm kind of talking with them about coming back on sometime.
Oh, neat.
But the way that they talked about writing interactive fiction and, how the point of view character can really determine how a player fits themselves into a game, whether that is by completely sinking themselves and their identity into a specific role, or by having to push that to the side and try to live through a character that is well defined in a game. I thought that was such a cool talk. Yeah. So those two are definitely up there. But then there are just ones that I thought are really funny, like the Familiars and Mounts episode is just like us riffing for 60 minutes.
Really punchy in that episode. Now, where do you hope to go over the course of this next year?
Yeah, so we've all been thinking a lot about this. So there's a lot of different things we could do. Obviously, I would love to, put out more content. I'm not sure if we'll be able to up the amount that we're already doing, just because of, how schedules and all that kind of thing. I'm hoping, though, to make a little bit more regular offerings. So I really want to do more system reviews so that we can get into sharing with our community the more indie devs and game systems that maybe people aren't super familiar with. I think this year has really shown the risk that comes with sinking all of your eggs into a single TTRPG basket, especially if that basket turns out to be Hasbro games. So I think that just being able to, show people the vast variety of games that are out there. I think that will be really cool. So we want to do more of those. Of course, we're going to still do a lot of interviews, try to introduce more members of the community to everyone else, indie devs, more mainstream folks as well, actors, actual play folks. It's going to be very fun. And then, of course, we'll still do some D&D stuff, and we'll still have stuff like Under the Bed where we do monster reviews and things like that. So it's like going to be more of the same, but I hope a little bit more structured so that the quality of each episode goes up and that people find them even more helpful than perhaps they did in the past. So
yeah, absolutely. It's been a little while since we've done it Under the Bed, actually.
The last one was Krampus, which I very much enjoyed.
Oh my gosh, right. It was Krampus. Oh boy. Now, one of the other things, who kind of blew your mind as far as, wow, I can't believe that we were able to secure that. And you know, if you don't want to name this person, I understand, but
there's been a few. I mean, we've had 3 doctors on the podcast, and every time one of them agrees to come on, I'm sort of like, what the heck? Like, why are you guys talking to me? Which has been, you know, really fun to really talk to people who are way more intelligent than myself about any specific topic. Their expertise is just mind blowing. I think that I really have enjoyed talking to Mike Sands twice now. He's just like, I think he's just like a very brilliant mind when it comes to game design and the feel of a TTRPG. Again, I'm really excited to release this episode. Fern Milton also talked about this when she was talking about the Ludo narrative kind of thing, where the board game industry, which is, you know, kind of like a brother or sister industry to TTRPGs.
For sure.
They are hyper specific in genre. Like you can find a game that is, you know, a engine building game, but it's also a pirate engine building game, but it's a deck builder as well or something. And like, it's like you can get into some very tight niches there. And we don't really do that in TTRPGs. We kind of take one system or a couple systems that we feel comfortable with, and we apply it to all genres and types of play. Not everyone, of course, but a lot of people, I feel like that is the starting place at the very least. And I think that Mike Sands and some of the Powered by the Apocalypse folks who develop within that system have started to kind of break that paradigm by releasing content like Masks: A New Generation or Blades in the Dark, which isn't, I don't think, Powered by the Apocalypse, but also there's stuff like Monster of the Week and Monster Hearts and lots of other ones that I'm not remembering at this moment, but all of them are so specific in feeling, and when you play them, you feel that specificity. And so whenever I talk to Mike Sands, I'm always just like very impressed by how he thinks about specificity in game design. So it's always a pleasure to talk to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the other things, I've seen a lot of the behind the scenes, obviously.
Unfortunately.
No. I mean,
suffered through it.
I don't think I've suffered. But what is the biggest hurdle in your mind to running a podcast?
Getting good audio. I've learned a lot in the last year, but man, it is tough. If you don't have a studio, everything is expensive. Everything takes a little bit of time, and the editing software can be really tricky to use. I'm getting better at it, but sometimes you're like, why is there just this high frequency ringing in the background of all of our audio? Wow, this really sucks. Whenever I take it out, it sounds like
or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And it just like, so that part I think is the biggest hurdle. When I get to talk to you guys or somebody I'm really excited to talk about, episodes actually feel fairly easy. Just because we just get to talk and chat. And everyone that I get to talk to is very smart about TTRPGs and games and, you know, this hobby. So I never feel like, man, this episode really sucks. I think that like there are definitely some that are a bit tighter than others, but it definitely, the hard part is just securing good audio.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a lot of really fun things that we've discussed and one of the joys of the podcast for me has been discovering things that, I might have tangentially known that something like that was out there, but I didn't really have a ton of information. It was always just kind of like, well, I can look it up later if I want. But there's just been so many things that we've had the pleasure of discussing that have got me excited to try. And now I'm desperately just trying to find the time. So I'm curious, what have you taken away from tabletop that you're just like, okay, I've got to implement this? Maybe you have implemented it already in your gaming
there's so
experience?
many things, man. There's so many things. I think that one thing is using mechanics to like shift how mechanics are supposed to be used within a game. Because like, hey, we're the people running the games. We get to decide how things are played. So fuck it. Let's just play the way we want to. I like implementing things like inversing how roles are supposed to function. So, the classic example I think we've given on the podcast is if you walk into a king's court and the king has like a really good eye for liars, essentially, that when you walk up and you just tell him something, even if you're not lying to him, roll a deception check. And if you're a super good liar, like a rogue that makes his trade on lying, and you have a plus 15 or whatever, and you get over a certain DC, then the king's like, you look like a liar. I'm not going to trust you.
Yeah, you're way too smarmy.
Exactly. Yeah. There's also some cool stuff that I've gotten during research for the show, like the rumor jar. I really love this mechanic where I forget which video I watched that had this, but you have a little jar that as your characters go through your campaign, if they start acting like murder hobos or whatever, and they go over and they kill an innkeeper's dog to like get a copper off of a room or something, you say threatened innkeeper by killing dog, and you fold it up and you put it in the rumors jar. And then when next time that they're trying to, haggle the price down of, some sword, you reach into the rumor jar and you're like, yeah, well, this blacksmith has heard that you killed a dog in a neighboring town for this innkeeper. It turns out that they're like along the same trade route, and that people have been sort of telling to beware of your group. So that DC to get this person to lower the price for you has doubled or whatever. So you can really keep players accountable.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, we're fortunate enough that for the most part we don't get too murder
happy. In our group I feel like it's more like, how do we act the most heroic? Like, are we going to screw up if we don't do this?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, we definitely have. I mean, I know I've certainly played more murderous characters, but that's a lot of fun, especially for, I think, a new group. I've seen so many nascent groups that just, they think, well, I had a lot of fun doing this in Morrowind or Skyrim or whatever. Let me just put a bucket on this person's head and steal the gold.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing that I've sort of been thinking about a lot is how some of our DM styles differ as well. And that's something that I've learned throughout the podcast and talking to other people. Some people are super dice reliant and they really think that dice are the most important thing. That's less so the case for me. And so we already kind of knew that when we started the podcast, but I also now know that like, there are very specific things that people try to do as players and as DMs that may not be the same, like they might be looking for a completely different experience or be ready to run a very different experience. Like I think one of the episodes that we did was first time like running a table for the first time. It is my personal opinion that in a first episode of any campaign, that your job as a DM is to make everyone have the most fun as they can, essentially, as possible, even if it means, being a little loose with rules and to let people do stuff that maybe you don't allow them to do all the time. And you just allow them to feel like this was like a crazy experience so that they are immediately invested in your campaign and they just want to come back,
Yeah.
And I know that we had a little bit of an argument across the table of some people being like, no, you can't do that. You have to set realistic expectations. Like, what are you talking about? Let them do whatever they want, you know? So I think that it's also been interesting to just hear where we all disagree with each other too, because I always feel like everyone has good reasons for why they do stuff. I still don't agree with all of it, but I just like think it's very cool to see differences in DM styles as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, we like to joke a little bit about how awful it's been with Hasbro this year. Which system? I mean, obviously, we're gonna try and deep dive into a lot more niche in this coming year. But which system that you haven't interviewed yet are you hoping to get to?
Oh, this is a good question. Do you mean
like
a developer interview or a system review episode?
Either or, really.
Oh man, so a developer I really, really want to interview is the developer of City of Mists. That game is really, really cool. I like how the fundamentals of that game is so customizable. Basically, you have an idea or a theme of the core part of that game is you are the avatar of some sort of story. And that can be so flexible what that means. It could mean that you are the avatar of the big bad wolf. And what does that mean? You're going to make custom moves based on that theme. Right. But you can also be like you could be the avatar of like the blind prophet in ancient Greek mythology. And like that is your avatar that you pull your power from. So all of your powers come from that. I just love how customizable that is. And it really allows players to get into what they're really interested in and build very custom stuff to their play styles. Yeah. And I think that that's just like a really cool thing. I also love noir detective sort of things. And that is the core niche, I guess, that this game fills is like supernatural noir. So I'd love to interview the creator. If you're listening, please send us a DM. We're talking for a little bit and then just sort of stop. So if you want to talk to us still, I would love to interview you. I know that they just had sort of like a release of an expansion and stuff.
Very busy.
Which has been really great.
I'm sure.
Very busy. For system reviews, a system that I would really love. Well, recently with Fern's interview, she just got me super excited for Locus, which is a Hoyo TTRPG that seems really, really cool. I would love to give that a try. I'm like you, I'm sort of strapped for time, so I'm very interested in shorter form games like 10 Candles and things like that. There's a game that I have my eye on that I think we're going to be doing a review very soon called Alice is Missing. And it is a silent role-playing game where you all are in high school and your friend Alice, who is a junior year woman, has disappeared and is just gone. Okay. And you as a group of her friends are trying to figure out what happened to her. And it's sort of like a mix between a TTRPG and a board game in that you buy the game and it has like all these cards and all that, but it is just really interesting. It's a silent game, so all of the communication happens over text because you're all high schoolers and you're like texting each other. And I'm just like very interested in it. It looks very fun. So that's one that I'm hoping will come out soon.
I think that sounds really interesting. I also immediately, as soon as you said that it all happens over text, had a visceral fear run through my spine because I was just like, yeah, the girl's missing. We don't know what happened. Like I'm a man in my 30s. I don't need to be talking about a missing teenager, like in that much in depth. But at the same time, I desperately want to play that.
It's going to be very fun. It'll again, it's one of those one-offs. One thing that you've been doing kind of as a solo project, but I'm really interested in finally getting to talk to you about it, is solo TTRPGs. You've been running one just for like inspiration, or did for a little while. That always seems like wild to me. There are a lot of board games that do this too, where you just can play solo. And I have never found the time to do that, essentially, or like the desire to spend the time while doing it alone. I think it's probably a very powerful tool for a DM to inspire a campaign or sessions or whatever. But I just know nothing about it, so I'm very interested in hearing about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that came out of, I was already, a lot of times when I'm building out something for an actual campaign, I'll kind of run a scenario because, a CR says that it should be this difficulty, but in my experience, your players are always going to do something that surprises you, that either kills them when they should have been an easy fight, or this should have been an insurmountable thing, and they just walked all over this monster.
Yeah. The dice tell a specific story.
Yeah, so I sometimes would just play out using my players' character sheets before a session. What do I think they will do? How will this actually feel? And so the transition into a solo RPG experience, very natural. And I will say, for you're looking for shorter experiences. You're not going to find anything shorter than this, because this is it's journaling, and you can put as little or as much time into it as you want, and you can pick it up anywhere. I mean, I've done it on the train.
Yeah.
Because I just need my cell phone. I don't need anything else. So yeah, I definitely look forward to chatting a little bit more about that on the pod. I'm not really certain about this, but has there been anything, and again, if you're not really comfortable with this, has there been anything that you've because you've not come across any assholes, but is there anything that you've talked about or learned about in this process that you're like, yeah, I'll just never do that?
Yeah. It's a good question. So far, everyone, I mean, when I talked to Basil Wright, who is a fantastic game designer, their project, I think it's called Pelogos, is right now, I think it's like 77% funded, so people should look them up online.
Absolutely.
They're also a sensitivity consultant, and some of the stuff I heard from them, I was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Just like horror stories, right, where like someone, one of the best lines I think in that interview, which is great, you guys should all go listen to it, but they say, you sometimes receive manuscripts or design blueprints where somebody has accidentally recreated colonialism.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh no, you did the thing. So
yeah,
that part of me is like, is made when I world build, it's made me a lot more conscious. To the point where sometimes I think that I leave things a little too vague, because I don't want to. One of our first episodes was about creating a comforting or a safe table to play at with Margaret Clark, and it's just hard. Like, I agreed with pretty much everything she said. Like, I don't want to deal with slavery in my game. Like, I don't want to be at a table where we're making decisions around enslaved people. It's just like not something that is very welcoming or safe for all players. And same thing with some of the grim, darkier topics that you can get into. But I have struggled a little bit lately, where sometimes I feel like, in my attempt to not make the world feel
oppressive.
Yeah, I guess that's a great word. In my endeavor to make it not feel oppressive, I've left it a little vague. So I'm still trying to figure out that balance between being specific, which I think is where all good stories go and where all good game design leads, is like specificity of experience. So I'll figure it out. But like, right now, I think I'm in the place where I'm not taking big swings, because I don't want to create an oppressive atmosphere,
Yeah.
But recently I had a really great, so this is like from my table, I started a work game with some folks, and they are people who fix a wall around a city, and nobody knows what's on the outside of the city. They just know that essentially this god emperor says that outside the city is evil and horror, and he has created this safe wall for everyone to live within, and it is sort of like the duty of the lowest caste, the wallmen, to go and fix the wall. they meet the Duke of Skaven, which is a Warhammer reference. If anyone gets it, it's very good for you.
Is the God Emperor.
Yeah, the God Emperor. Yeah. So like the Duke of Skaven is the Duke that runs the Wallman organization and makes sure that he keeps the wall. And I felt so good because I essentially built it so that they would love him. He was like, he is the most well-funded Duke. He lives in basically a unfurnished, dilapidated apartment, essentially, because he gives all of his money to the organization that he runs. He's making sure everyone tries to get food, like, and fed around him. He is like putting all of his resources to make sure that the survivability rate of this group goes up. And they met him and were like, yeah, this guy's great. He's like so nice. He's having dinner with us because the person who is training us was killed at the wall, and he wanted to, express his condolences. And then these people came and tried to basically attacked them while they were eating and were trying to kill the Duke. They overcame this kind of bandit encounter, and the Duke was like, wow, okay, gather up all the vendors that were at the fair outside. These people were all disguised as vendors, so gather them all up and kill them. And they were all like, wait, what? And he was like, yeah, don't worry, I'm gonna get rid of all these heretics.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. I don't blame any of you guys, because one of them accidentally brought in something that dispelled all the safety magic in the house so that they could enter. He's like, I don't blame you guys. This stuff happens. Like, I appreciate, feel free to finish the dinner. This is like essentially on me. I'm going to go deal with this. And they were all sort of like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And that's when I felt the best, because I was making them, see the duality of this very complicated person who believes so much in his work that he will commit atrocities while also taking care of the people who he thinks are with him in his work. So I thought that was like a moment of, success in that vague versus oppressive binary.
Yeah, absolutely. And yet another Warhammer reference, zealotry. So yeah, no, that's a lot of fun. I have to agree. I find it is very hard sometimes. And this is one of the reasons, I have lamented my rather harsh setting the table I felt of what I had to say about the Forgotten Realms. Yeah. And part of that was coming out of, I think around that time, we were doing some Dungeon of the Mad Mage stuff.
Yeah.
And we came to one of the floors that had goblins, and those goblins are setting up a slave market. And everyone was just like, no, this is awful. And, I agree. It's never a comfortable topic. And it's not something I really enjoy dealing with. But on the flip side of that, so to an extent, you need villains to actually be villains.
Yeah.
And so finding that kind of middle ground, it can be difficult.
I think too, and I guess we're kind of getting into an episode. I've tricked you. I've tricked you into talking about a specific topic.
Degenerate criminal.
Exactly. Back in the cage. Well, the thing that I think about this the most is something that Margaret said during that interview was like, don't villainize people's, villainize systems. And I think that is an interesting way to go about it, where it leads to a very kind of political drama pretty much every time, because it's like, oh, Strahd is like a flawed hero, but the system that he has set up in Barovia is like horrifying. The system is the bad thing that is driving all these people to do bad stuff.
Yeah.
Like, that is a political drama, rather than saying Strahd is, a real asshat, and he hurts a lot of people, and he's just really mean, and once he's gone, the problem is solved.
Right.
That's a very different kind of story, very simple story. And so I think that making complex stories tends to involve kind of battling with those ideas. I had a friend who passed away this year who was on the podcast, Michael, who talked about the Story Circle, another great episode. People should go back and listen to it. But something that Michael was doing was he was developing a system where you would essentially, the setting was you were a army that lost a war with a new republic that was kind of being birthed out of an empire that was in decline. And you are a regiment of the Empire's army that has been essentially defeated, and you are given 3 of the flags of the Republic that you basically will ensure you safe passage back to your border. But as part of it, and this is a little grim dark, so trigger warning, but all of the soldiers who are not like in command of the regiment are blinded as punishment for, waging war against this people. And so you are responsible for 1,000 people trying to get back home to safety, and you are the group that you're playing with. There's the DM and like maybe 3 to 5 folks. They are the last people who are in charge of making these decisions. And so it's really meant to challenge your ideologies and to put them into practice and see where they fall short and where they flourish. And what he really wanted to do was to challenge people to fight against some of their held beliefs that maybe didn't have a basis. And I think that is something that TTRPGs allow us to do, is to really put ourselves into other positions and feel that empathy and take on a new perspective that maybe we didn't have before. All of this to say is that I think that things are complicated, and making your stories complex is a good thing. It's just also a very hard thing. So when you don't have a whole lot of time, like we don't these days, it's much easier to be like, okay, this is a 3 session one shot where there's a big bad baron who's smushing children to make real good fertilizer for his demon crops, and it's like, oh great, cool, we have a very easy thing to go do.
yeah absolutely. I agree with all of that. And obviously, with our Forgotten Realms game, that's kind of where we went. You deposed the people who were doing some bad things and have been kind of helping that society a little bit kind of redirect. But again, I've kind of leaned more towards the vagueness following the initial like, none of us like that's happening, and I think that playing it safe is better.
It's actually interesting. So Mac, a sometimes co-host and one of my friends who also plays TTRPGs, huge game nerd. You're gonna probably hear some board game reviews in the coming year with him. He is always like, yeah, we can really wrestle with these big ideas, but if we really want to, tackle the issues of our time, why aren't we writing a play? Like, why aren't we making political theater or something? So it is a game in the end. And I do think that is important to remember, because in your case with the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, we were all like, nah, not for us. And we pivoted, and now we're playing this character-based like game where we're all doing like random shit all the time, and it's really fun, and we're all enjoying ourselves while and I am still able to do stuff that's a little bit more interesting to me, which is have like a real character story where I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my mom, who has sort of like dementia-like symptoms, but I'm trying to figure out how to take care of her, but also some weird kind of supernatural stuff is happening around it that is leading me on an investigation. Whereas like another person is just like, I'm trying to find a really cool coat. I went to a tailor to find the coolest coat, and then that led to a thing where we're trying to find a escaped mannequin who had gone a little crazy. So like it's all over the place, and like I think that's the best part of these games, is that they can be anything to anybody. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, gosh, Nick, I don't know really if I have any more questions at this time, but I do want to just express my gratitude for all the hard work that you've been doing on this, for kind of giving not only our little Fring group this fun thing to rally around, in addition to the games that we do and the other fun that we have, but also just making something that people seem to really enjoy. So it's something that I really appreciate. Is there anything that we didn't discuss for this 1 year mark that you wish we had?
Oh boy. Let's see. First of all, that's very sweet. Thank you. I really enjoy talking with the audience whenever, like, the fact that we got 2 mailbag episodes in the first year, like I was like, wow, this is amazing. People have questions, and I would love to talk about it with them. And the fact that we're talking to developers and designers is just really great. Yeah, I think that I don't really have anything else. I just really hope that people continue to enjoy it. And I really encourage people to send in some feedback via the contact form on our website, tabletopppod.com. I always love to hear what people really like and what they don't like, because we're all still figuring this out. So if people are like more designer interviews, less under the beds or whatever, then send that to us. We would like to hear it.
Yeah. And if you've sent something recently on that contact form and you didn't include your email, we have updated that form because it came to our attention that for whatever reason, that field was not there.
Yes,
so it is now a required
Lucy,
field.
please.
Yes, Lucy.
I think it's please send in your question again, or it's a really great one. We'd love to talk to you, but we need your email so I can get back to you.
Sorry, Lucy. That's on me. I built the website and I did apparently miss that field. So that's my bad. Sorry, Lucy. Great. Well, thank you so much, Nick. And, I really hope that this continues for several years and that we just continue to have wild fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. There's so much more to come. Like, I know Daniel wants to do some actual play stuff. Who knows if that will be part of the new year. We have new ideas of new types of episodes. We have new guests that we're already like starting to book out until April and May. So I'm just really excited to keep going as well. And thank you and the other co-hosts, Franco and Daniel, for being a part of it. It's really great.
All right. Well, everyone, this has been Tabletopped. I am Shade. I am joined by Nick, and we really appreciate you listening. Take care.
Bye.